Greetings and welcome to the Pransform podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio. It's Friday, February 17th, 2023, and this is episode 103. So welcome back, guys. Last came to you on February 8th. Last week with episode 102, talked a little bit about, or went into a little more depth about artificial intelligence, the artificial intelligence kind of movement or takeover, as I put it in the title, of the digital marketing space and what we're seeing in terms of the influence of tools like ChatGPT, the competitor to ChatGPT from Google that will eventually enter the marketplace called Bard, B-A-R-D, and other tools out there that are similar but maybe not as powerful, things like Copy AI or Jasper, et cetera, et cetera. So that episode, if you guys are thinking about that, and if you aren't thinking about it, I would argue you should start thinking about it. But if you've got that on your mind, how do you use AI? How do you go ahead and make better use of those tools? Then episode 102 is for you. Please take a look at that. Take a listen to that. It actually kind of builds a little bit on the Century episode that myself and my colleague, Mayank Singh, did jointly on January 5th. And that was where we looked out at the 2023 digital landscape. And we kind of touched on the surface of the AI movement and the ChatGPT phenomenon that was really only about 5 weeks old at that point. And now, even in just a short time after that, it's become part of the regular discourse, it seems. So anyway, take a look at that episode if you get a chance. Really appreciate it, guys. Let's kind of jump in to 103 today. And I actually wanted to cue off of a post that my colleague Mike put up on his LinkedIn account a few days ago, actually about a day and a half ago or so, about something that, very simple thing. I mean, we're going from the AI takeover, episode 102, to something much simpler and basic that is so overlooked at many times, it's worth repeating. And I think the interesting thing about this episode, today's, is that it builds on an episode that was way, way, way back in the beginning. I think it was one of our first 2 or 3 episodes where we talked about logo design and branding and use of colors and fonts and word choice and so forth. Really would encourage you guys to take a listen to that. That published probably back in October of 2021, if I remember correctly, or maybe November 2021 at the latest. But what was really interesting, I encourage you guys to go check out Mike's LinkedIn account, where he was reposting and commenting on one of the other digital assets that we manage called Plethora IT. And Plethora IT had put up a really simple but very powerful animation about the choice of fonts, like how you choose to present information in the digital landscape, even when the words are exactly the same. Just the way it's presented, the way it visually comes across to the consumer can make a world of difference. And I think the guys at Plethora picked an excellent example of this phenomenon with regard to how just a font change, no difference in wording, just a font change can actually go ahead and make you feel something totally different. And so the animation, I mean, not to give it away, guys, you got to take a look at it, is at first they post the words, "You are not alone." And the words are presented in sort of a greenish color, slightly on the darker side than lighter side, and in a cursive kind of script, not calligraphy, but kind of like a script or cursive font that's sort of leaning forward a little bit. It has like a warm sense to it. Like when you read it, the first thing you feel is like, oh, it's a comforting message. You are not alone. You're supported. You've got people on your side. Like those are the things that you think of when you see it. And then underneath that, after a couple of seconds, they put the exact same words, "You are not alone," except now it's in red font, and the font style is what you'd kind of expect in, let's say, a horror movie. Like let's say somebody like scratched the words into like a wooden door, or like carved it into stone or something like that. Like it has like a very jagged, very like harsh kind of orientation to it. It's very hard to describe. You have to take a look at it. But it just gives you a totally different feeling, a totally different sense of what's being conveyed. Like, oh, I'm not alone. There's some malicious presence around me or something like that. So I really got a kick out of it. I was just kind of like looking at it again before I started this podcast for you guys. And I just looked at it and I was like, this is perfect. Like, I don't know if you could have picked a better set of sentiments to mirror image each other and then put in these different fonts and really convey these very, very, very different meanings. So I think, guys, this isn't a long, complicated episode, but it's kind of a call to action to you to go back and look at these things on your digital marketing materials, whether that's your website, whether that's your social media accounts, whether that's, whether it's the hard copy materials, like if you're doing slicks or brochures or presenting information in some kind of hard copy like that. So it's anything from really, I guess I said digital, but it could be anything from digital to traditional marketing materials that are going to have information in them that you want to come across in the warmest, most positive, most forward-leaning, kind of optimistic sort of way. But sometimes, without even realizing it, you may not be coming across that way. You may not be conveying what you think you're trying to convey to the reader, to the consumer. And so that's something that I think you need to take some, a look at with fresh eyes. And I would encourage you to give the material or point someone towards the material, particularly if it's online, who's maybe objective in this, who doesn't have any bias whatsoever and will be honest with you, and just say, hey, like, what do you think of this? What do you think of, or what do you feel when you see this? Does it make, is it conveying what I want it to convey? And just listen to their reaction. Like, I wouldn't bias them with anything up front. Just say, hey, what do you think of this? Like, put it in front of them or point them towards it and ask them what they think about it. And what you're really looking for is for somebody to feel reassured, somebody to feel, that whatever they're seeing or consuming is, gives off that air of, reliability, integrity, honesty, veracity. Okay, those types of things you want to have come through. And I think that, you can't assume that everybody's going to see it the way you see it, and you really want to get some opinions on how others are consuming it. People who might be on the other end of the equation and are not looking at it from, let's say, a practitioner's standpoint, or from the business owner's standpoint, or from the owner's standpoint. Anything you might be seeing, you want to kind of get to the opposite side of that and see what other people are seeing when they consume your marketing material, your posts, your website, etc. And I think it's not just the font. I think this is a great example of it. When you go check out Mike's post from a couple days ago, I think that you'll see exactly what I'm talking about from a font perspective, but it's more than the font. It's things like the color, it's the word choice, it's the positioning, it's the density of information that goes with it. Is it like, just a word salad that you're throwing up on a website, or are you very deliberate about the text that you're using and you're very minimalist about it? Not saying one's right or wrong, but just looking at these factors and these elements and questioning every one of them. Like, I think, honestly, guys, like, being that it's the beginning of 2023, we're still in the fairly early days of the year, like, use it as kind of like your refresh. If you haven't done this already, let's say in late 22 or right as the year started, like, lay this down as a baseline. Like, go to every social media account, go to your website, take every hard copy piece of marketing material out, and take a hard, fresh look at it. What do I think of the fonts? What do I think of the colors? What do I think of the logo? Is it time to switch that up? Is there a reason to change it? Is it not effective? Am I not getting the responses that I want to from it? So I give it your own look, and then I would also open it up to outsiders, quote unquote. Somebody who's a third party, could be a consumer of the product. I mean, they don't have to be, but they could be somebody who reasonably would engage with your product or service, but they have nothing to do with your business. They're not in your business, they're not an employee of your business, they haven't already done business with your business. This has to be somebody who essentially is taking a fresh look at the material and a fresh look at your business and its colors and fonts and logos and taglines and slogans and on and on and on, all the way down the line. Just those, what I would call, and I think I've mentioned this on several podcasts, particularly last year, your philosophical assets, your baseline intellectual property that surrounds your business, the words that you use, the colors that you use, the fonts that you use, the logos that you use, all those things that kind of comprise that intellectual property, those philosophical assets, are things that you want to get a fresh opinion on, a fresh look at them. So that's really where I think you want to come from in checking in on this issue and seeing, like, okay, where do I stand with this? And I really think when you guys check out this post that Mike put up, if you haven't already been thinking about this, like this will jar you into it, because you'll see just how different those choices of color and font can really make you feel when you read these words that I described to you. So anyway, guys, nothing really more substantial than that for us to go over. I think this is really one of those very simple kind of reminders that you've got to get back on top of this if you haven't looked at it in a while. If you have, maybe you went through a brand refresh, maybe you kind of updated all your stuff for 2023, maybe not as big of a deal. But if you haven't done it in a while, if you just haven't thought about it, if it's been sitting there that way for years, there's always that increasing chance that your message is distorted, it's dissonant, it's not reaching people the right way, it's turning people off potentially. So you really want to give it that hard look and get that outside opinion at it, okay? All right, I really appreciate you guys checking out the podcast. Of course, as always, reach out to us if you have any questions, if you want to engage us on any branding discussions or working your digital marketing with you. You can reach us via our website, pransform.com. You can find us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Just look up Pransform. And of course, please, 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 if you don't already, follow us here on the podcast, subscribe to our podcast, let everybody you know who's in this kind of situation or this space know about the podcast. We deeply, deeply appreciate it. So anyway, with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and leave you. Got kind of a long weekend coming up here in the United States for the President's Day holiday on Monday. But we'll be back with you guys at least once next week with episode 104. In the meantime, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hope you have a great weekend. And we will be talking to you guys again soon next week. Thanks again. I'm Chris Anastasio, and have a great weekend, guys. Bye-bye.